All right, everybody. This is a great conversation with a good friend of mine, Dave Gerhardt. Dave used to run marketing over at Drift, which is where we got introduced, and he's been at HubSpot. He's been all over the place with his personal brand, but also in a lot of cool different marketing. So we talk about sales and marketing alignment. We talk about founder. He's got this book coming out called The Founder Brand and how we all should be using our own personal brand to do PR instead of going in and outsourcing that. And I talked to him about my whole theory of sales reps becoming mini marketers and also companies having to get very comfortable with individual people within their businesses representing their brand. So there's a lot of complexity to this one, sales and marketing alignment all over the place. Enjoy the ride.
What's up, everybody? Big shout out to our partners today, SalesLoft, ZoomInfo, and Reprise. SalesLoft is a game changer for cadences and APIs that streamline workflows and deliver incredible outreach results immediately. ZoomInfo has the best data in the business, hands down, and their data orchestration game is unmatched in the space today. But big ups to our friends at Reprise, the #1 full funnel product-led growth platform that's changing everything. Close more deals, increase conversions, and create interactive demos with Reprise. Let's pass it over to JB and introduce this week's guest. See you later, everybody.
All right. I would like to welcome to the podcast a good friend of mine who I haven't talked to in a little while, so I'm excited to catch up with him. Dave Gerhardt. How you doing, brother?
What's up, John? It's nice to catch up with you. I'm in a good mood. We had a nice catch up before, and I'm excited to be back and do a little chit chat. So thanks for having me.
No, thanks for coming on, man. And you know, people are going to get sick of me saying this because I'm starting off all my podcasts with, I'm redoing my whole brand, my personal brand. And now that I can take a step out of the business and let it run, so I got to figure out what that is. But I've decided that moving into 2022, the only people that I'm going to talk to, associate myself with, or engage with are people that bring positive energy to the world, and no more negative assholes, no more jackasses just because they're smart, right? That type of stuff. Like I'm forcing positivity with where we are. So the fact that you're in a good mood and we're having this conversation and you got some palm trees behind you, my friend, that is a perfect scenario here.
Well, I was going to, for people that don't actually know me, which is most people, I would think that most people would be shocked that I'm in that realm of things that bring you positivity. So I'm glad I could do that.
Hey man, it's look, I don't know about, do you know Larry Long Jr.? No, dude, you got to know Larry. So I brought him on the podcast right before. The dude is just, anytime you're in a bad mood, just go look up Larry Long Jr. and that dude will just put you in a happy mood. So, but with this one, man, for those people that don't know, we go back a ways, right? I think it was Drift was when we first met each other, but give everybody the journey here of where you're from. Cause you've had some killer ass marketing roles with HubSpot and Drift and all that other stuff. So walk us through that little background. And I think that'll put some context on what the conversation's all about.
Sure. So I basically just kind of after college, I fell into a PR agency, and then I got my way into tech through a company called Constant Contact, and that's how I got into SaaS. And it was at a time where SaaS company, I mean, they still are growing, but where SaaS and startups were exploding. And so I worked at HubSpot for a little bit, and I actually I met the founders of Drift early on, and I left HubSpot to go work at Drift. I was the first marketing person at Drift, and then the company grew from like 10 people to 300 people. And then this year, recently, over $1 billion valuation. And then I was CMO at a company called Privy for a year and a half. Privy got acquired by Attentive, which is a company in the SMS text messaging and e-commerce space. And now, after spending the last 10 years in kind of B2B SaaS, B2B marketing, I'm running my own business, which is a combination of consulting, and I also have a community, and I do a lot on the content side. I have like 4,500 paying members in the DGMG community and that kind of universe. And so now I'm here and just seeing what's going to happen in the future, running my own business and seeing where we'll go.
Love it, man. I think the journey is always real interesting to me as far as how people end up and where we're going, right? Now, I'm not even close to finished. I'm trying to figure out my next step here. And can I ask you something just before we get into this topics about sales and marketing and stuff like that?
Sure.
What's your approach these days to like goal setting and stuff like that, and your vision for yourself? Because I've started to really try to figure out, this year I'm like, I've got to set my goals again. But I figured out I'm really more of an evolutionist than a stake in the ground guy. You know what I mean? Like I'm an opportunist where I just kind of evolve and I'm like, I shift and I drive. So how do you like especially with where you are right now? Like, how are you looking at your?
I am not the guy that has the Google sheet with all my goals and week by week, broken down. And my wife and I want to save 20%, put 20% in savings. And so we're budgeting.
Right.
I'm not that person. I've kind of become very comfortable more of like on an intuitive, just kind of, I don't know, go with the flow, but like I'm very ambitious in my day-to-day stuff where like I have so many ideas and I go so fast and I want to execute. But lately I've just been having kind of, and I just did this from a marketing strategy perspective. I kind of just have 2 or 3 pillars, 2 or 3 bullet points that those are my goals. They're things that I am working towards. And so, they're not things like because I fell in the habit of like, I want to work out 300 days this year, and you have some tracker that's not who I am. So for me, like I have 2 very clear personal goals this year. And one of them is business related. It's a revenue goal that I set for DGMG. And the other one is personal related to golf. And I could have set 10 different things, but I've just determined that like I'm spending a lot of time with my family and I'm very family first. And so I don't feel like I need to set goals around that because that's just kind of like, that's like saying like, Dave, wake up and take a shower.
Right.
I'm going to be doing that. And so I said like, hey, what are 1 or 2 things that I am intentionally want to be thinking about? And that's DGMG and golf. And then the other things are kind of happening day to day. And so I use those as kind of my guiding principles. And so when things get off track, when I'm stressed out, when I don't know what I'm going to work on, I just take a step back and say like, okay, well, my goal is to grow DGMG to this revenue goal. Where am I at? Take a day, go see where I'm at. Okay, let's pause, figure out what things I want to start and continue. And then we'll keep going.
Love it. And if you found like, so because I'm extremely similar to you, I've tried to get the detailed nuanced stuff. And I'm like, I've realized I go through the exercise. I'm like, whatever, I'm just going to keep rolling here and it changes all the time. So I look more day to day now. But I do have a bigger picture, some bigger things, but do you subscribe to the whole why, like what's your why type of thing before you can do anything?
I think that like for me, I spent a lot of time trying to like overanalyze the why, and then I had kids and I'm like,
there's your why, right?
Oh, okay, that's my why. And that's not to say like there's people that you don't have to have children and
No.
some people can, and that's my point is not that. My point is that's what it is for me. And so my why is I want to give my kids the most amazing life, and I want to spend as much time with them and my wife and my kids as I can selfishly. And so my why is, I want to have a business that I generate a boatload of money so I can do that with my family, so I can have that freedom. And so that's the way that I talk to myself, which is like, I got to remind myself like, should I do this thing or not? Well, to me, money is really just, I want money because I want time. I want to just be able to say, you know what, I want to go hang out I want to go hang out for a week with just my kids and my wife, or we're just going to go do something. Or I want to go, be able to take care of my parents or visit visit whoever. So my why is just like, okay, what am I willing to trade time for? Well, I need to generate income because I want to, take care of my family and do all that stuff. And so it just comes back to like, I want my kids. I was never able to be a great artist or a great musician or a great athlete. I dabbled in all those things. I had to go into business to pay my loans, to pay my way through school, to pay for my stuff. What if my kids could grow up and be like, my daughter is an amazing artist. Like, I don't have to be like, you need to get a job, sister, because like, I want to let her pursue that. Versus like, if that was me growing up, like, well, dude, you're broke. You have nothing. So you gotta go get a job. You're not gonna, you can't take 5 years and go backpack Europe. And I'm not saying, Annie, if you're listening to this one day, you're not doing that either. But if you want to do, if you want to take one of these more creative pursuits, like my wife and I talk a lot about, like, I want to be in a position to do that, and not have to trade your passion for for money. And I don't know, somehow we ended up in this like very philosophical thing, but that's how I think about it. And I honestly, I also think a big part of it is like knowing the things that I enjoy doing and the things that are like positive, that actually bring in income, right? And so like, I think a lot of people get caught up in this goal setting, and then you're okay, go cool. Well, there's no need for the thing that you're offering. So I understand that that's your passion. You want to build a business around this, but like, you still have to have a market for that product. And so it's like, it's never going to be perfect. Do I wish that DGMG was a consumer golf company instead of B2B marketing? Of course, sure, that's my passion, right? But like, my why is I'm using this, like, I'm using my knowledge that I've gained, my knowledge and experience over the last decade in B2B sales and marketing to help out other companies. Mm-hmm. They find that very valuable. And so that's kind of like the business that I've set up. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, man, I say that to my daughter all the time. As I say that when somebody asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? The answer to that question is happy, period. Right? Like, that's it. It's happiness, and whatever happiness means for you, right? If that's being an artist and supporting yourself and being able to do it, or if it's going into business, or if it's traveling the world, whatever, as long as I can say at the end, you're happy, then I think I've done my job as a parent. So
as long as happy doesn't mean taking all of dad's money and going to Amsterdam and blowing the whole bankroll. So I want you to be happy too, yes. But not at let's be reasonable.
I completely agree with that. Although I have gone to Amsterdam and blown a lot of money in that, so I can tell her at least some stories. Right?
It's your business. It's your business. It's okay.
So I'm curious. One of the reasons I wanted to reach out to you. First of all, we hadn't caught up in a long time, but the other thing is COVID changed a lot of stuff, right? And I think it accelerated a lot of things in some good ways, and it threw a lot of other things away that we were doing that didn't make sense. And to me, the marketing and the brands right now, I've been chirping for a while now that sales reps need to become mini marketers at this point, right? It's about laying the groundwork, and it's all about positive impressions, right? So yes, we have account marketing and doing account-based marketing and all this stuff, but if you really want to own it, as an individual contributor, but also even as a leader, that you really got to buy into this like marketing mindset in a lot of ways. Could you how have you seen specifically over the past 2 years things shift from a sales and marketing standpoint, and where do you think the focal point should be these days for companies and individuals? Let's talk individual reps, and then let's blow it out a little bit to companies. But how do you see things shift?
Yeah. Well, John, in these unprecedented times,
I hope you and your family are well.
No, well, okay. Yes, I hope all is well, Dave. And I saw you went to Wagner College. Yes, I did 15 years ago. So I think there's a couple of things that are important in there. So we should talk about both of them. But because there's like what's changed, what the landscape is, but then there's also like you mentioned this. I want to talk about this part first. Sales reps should be mini marketers. And I think if you're in this world of B2B sales, I think you have the best opportunity right now to build a mini brand for yourself. And we can go on a rant about what that means or not. But like, you should be, if I was a sales rep at any company, I would be using LinkedIn to build up my own mini audience. Separate from the company, separate from anything else, because ultimately, like, B2B selling is about education and expertise. And so if you're a rep at this company, you're in these meetings all day, you're doing demos all day, you're talking to customers all day, you're hearing objections all day, you're hearing pain points all day. How can you turn that into content that you're sharing about your niche? And that means if you're selling financial technology, then you should be posting as many, once a day or 3, 4, 5 times a week about your observations about what's happening based on conversations that you're having in the financial technology market. Not always promoting your company, but just like you contributing your knowledge. Because, if you have a beer with a sales rep like that, she could probably go on for 6 hours and tell you things from the industry. Take that and become your own publisher. You can literally reach your dream customers online via social media and have your content and your thoughts and your principles in front of them before they ever choose to buy from you. that's a huge advantage. And LinkedIn is just like absolutely exploded. It's like, we're not asking you to go on Facebook and, or, you know, where like your family is and start talking about your job. I'm asking you to do it in like the stream where everybody's is swimming. You're not going to get laughed at if you post some sales thought on LinkedIn. Like look at the terrible things people post there every day. You posting actual valuable content is not gonna hurt anybody, and it's only gonna help you become sharper too, because you're gonna have to write something every day, publish something every day. You're kind of always working on like giving your own thoughts a little bit more clarity. And so I think that LinkedIn is still the most underrated channel to be used by sellers. And I actually think that like, to me, using LinkedIn, you're only using like half of LinkedIn if you're just using it for like Sales Navigator and like, hey, I see you're connected to John. Can you reach out to them? You can be your own thought leader in your niche, and you don't have to have lots of experience to do this, because you're not saying that I am an expert. You're saying I work for this company. The company has raised X millions of dollars. They are clearly the expert. I'm just me on my journey. And I'm going to be the tour guide, and I'm going to narrate all the things that are happening. I would be posting that stuff on social media all the time. And I think if you could do that, you'd be surprised at how much easier how much easier cold messages get opens and responses when you have that, and how much more stuff might start coming inbound to you. I think the problem is a lot of companies just try to make it like employee advocacy, and they're just like, yeah, hey, tweet out links, you know, post a link on LinkedIn and talk about our webinar next week, and that's not what works.
Yeah, I think that, you know, so you come across it a lot. What do you think the biggest hang up is of why reps or founders or whoever don't start putting out content? Is it because they're scared? They don't think they know enough? Is there an imposter syndrome? My personal opinion is there's no short-term benefit to doing it. And we're in such a short-term world, specifically in sales. Like, I got to hit my numbers. So yeah, me posting that's going to be cool. It's going to help me build my brand, but I got to hit my number this week. So screw that. But like, what are you seeing the biggest hang up is?
Well, I think that's a bullshit objection also, because that same person is sitting on the toilet scrolling LinkedIn,
exactly,
scrolling Instagram, and so like it's not additional time at all. So I think what's stopping it is it's probably a laundry list of those things.
Yeah.
It's the perception of, yeah. I think they're all valid. They're all valid. Like I'm worried that I'm going to get laughed at. Well, first of all, okay, comfort is the enemy of growth, right? So like I get frustrated when somebody gives me all the 10 objections about why they won't post on social media. I'm like, okay, you know what? Then maybe it's not for you. Then don't complain about not being able to generate more interest for your business or whatever the benefit is. But I think, like, look, first of all, go to LinkedIn, and there is so much crap on there.
Oh my God.
And if you actually go to LinkedIn and read the things people are posting, and you still feel like your idea is going to get laughed at, then we're not talking about the same thing. Yeah. And so, first of all, you're probably going to be fine. Second of all, nobody's going to laugh at you because probably nobody's going to see it, because you don't have an audience there anyway. And so that's a problem that you don't have to worry about right now. God forbid people did see it and did respond to it. that would be a good thing. Not knowing what to say, I think you know what to say. You just have to change your perception about what you think. You don't need to come up with some big, is there a funny story from a call that happened last week? Is there one pet peeve you have? Is there a book about sales that you love, and is there a quote that you could talk about? I just think you might not know where to draw inspiration from. Mm-hmm. But that's why I like the idea of just committing to do it. Don't set a short-term goal. Like I think the best short-term goal you could set is like, okay, for the next, I'm not going to think about metrics or anything, but from now until June, I'm going to try to write 3 posts a week. And that's your measurable goal. Your goal is just to show up 3 times a week, try to add something. Yep. And like use the notes app in your phone. And when you're on a walk or you just got off a call, write that down in the moment. You don't have to always like pull up LinkedIn and it's like this blank slate and it's like, write something. Yeah. It's like, no, I got 15 ideas or things that have come up. Which one should I share now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do that a lot. I actually use video all the time. Like when an idea pops in my head, I literally just light up a video and I record it. I don't post it because I'm just like in the moment thinking about it. And then when I sit back and I'm like, all right, what am I going to post? Some of it is just the videos, but then some of it is the idea that leads to a leads to a post that I can then put some deep thought into, right? But it's always a way to capitalize on wherever you're coming up with those ideas and wherever you're getting that inspiration from.
Also, just like I think that like so much of the most important insights in companies comes from the sales team, and having worked closely with them, that's where like the best gems for what should be on the website. I'm not giving sales so much credit, so salespeople don't think that you can just change the website at any time. I'm not saying that.
No. But please no.
No, I'm just kidding. But you get some of the best nuggets from sales reps, and if you catch somebody in a conversation, they might tell you, "Man, I'm so frustrated selling to this buyer. They always come in and they think this and they don't ask for this," and I'm like, that's what the gold content is, right? Like go share that. You don't have to post like I ate a turkey sandwich for lunch. Like post the actual learnings. Like and this is not going to be for every rep at every company, right? I think that this is probably the top performers, top 3 or 4 reps at a company are going to want to do this. And that's who I think we're talking to, John. Like that's who probably is listening to your podcast. Mm-hmm. But I also think like what happens when that happens inside of a company is when a couple of reps, 1 or 2 start doing it and they start feeling the success of that. It's just like anything. The easiest way to get adoption among a sales team inside of a company is have 1 or 2 champions. And so if all of a sudden Mike has been posting amazing LinkedIn content and all of a sudden he's getting deals that he never got before and he's getting into meetings he never got before. And all of a sudden buyers are commenting on his posts, all around the team, people are going to want to emulate that. Mm-hmm. Same way they're like, they're using this tech tool versus that tech tool. It's the same thing. Yeah. So I think we're talking to that person. If that's you, all those thoughts that you have walking home from work, driving home from work, walking around the house, write them down. And that's the stuff that you should be talking about on LinkedIn. It doesn't have to be some silly meme or some like gimmick to get attention. That's not the goal. The goal is to lead with education and expertise.
Yeah, you can do that on TikTok and stuff like that. But LinkedIn is, and you drop a funny one every once in a while. But I think the best, one of the best hacks or approaches that I've seen a long time is, and I did this inadvertently. Was I started a podcast, but my podcast wasn't because I was sitting there saying, hey, I'm the industry thought leader here and I want to tell everybody how smart I am. It was because this is how I learn. Like I recognize in myself that I don't read. I don't like reading at all. I'll read like 5 pages into a book and I'll fall dead asleep. Right. I think I've read grand total probably 5 or 6 books in my life. Like I also like seminars and stuff like that. Like I tend to fall asleep in seminars and listen to idiots talk. But when I have a conversation with somebody who's smarter than me and I'm genuinely curious, right? So what it's done is it's been an education for me, but obviously the content comes out of that. But the reps, for instance, and Sweetfish Media does a good job with this. They're for podcasts and stuff, they actually use it as a sales tool to leverage to get into your tier 1 account. So think about this, right? Instead of you cold calling into a CEO of one of your tier 1 accounts and say, hey, I got this great product I want to sell you. What about going ahead and interviewing that man or woman on your podcast about their expertise in your space, and then first of all, they're 10 times more likely to respond to that. Second of all, you can't be a thinly veiled sales pitch. You got to seek to understand, but inevitably it usually turns into, hey, this was a cool conversation. Like, what do you guys do, by the way? And then all of a sudden you're now have an impression where you can now talk to somebody else, and it creates content. You got knowledge, you got access, all these different things for doing like 1 interview a week, for crying out loud.
What's up, everybody? I know you're enjoying this conversation. John does a great job with genuine curiosity on these episodes, and our guests consistently bring the heat. We want to take a moment here and let you know that you've got an opportunity to become better than you were yesterday. And you can do so by gaining access to all of JB Sales' content All of their training, tips, techniques, tactics, and takeaways can be yours for $1 a day. $365 for the year gets you annual access to everything, including our private Slack channel for members only, which you get access to all of us directly 100% of the time, 24 hours a day. And then at the same time, you're going to get access to our bi-weekly Ask Me Anything sessions where you can bring real deals to the table and get the help that you need where you need it. This is very, very important. Sales reps that invest in themselves are often found at the tops of their leaderboards. Join us today and get the help you need to become the seller that you deserve to be. That URL, one more time, is joinjbsales.com. Let's get back to the show with JB and our guest for this week.
I've long been a proponent of, I think that every SaaS company should have their own podcast focused on the niche of the of the market that they're trying to serve, and they should have a list of their top 100 customers and should be going down that list and saying, we're going to try to do 2 interviews a week, and so we're going to get to 100 this year, and we're not going to sell to them at all. It's not just going to be it's not going to be a interview about the company or about the product, but how can you create a show that those people would be ideal guests on, and it would be very valuable, and then that becomes like what you lead with. I think that's a great strategy. And the funny part is it's very commonly recommended advice now, and people love to poo-poo it and say, oh, too many people are doing that. I actually think I haven't seen that many people do it because nobody is willing to stick to the commitment of it, the consistency of it. The CEO wants to host a podcast, but then, they don't ever make the time to record for it, or they don't get excited about it. And all of a sudden they pass it down. And at every company, here's what happens. It regresses back to another shitty channel to promote the company product. And that is not how this, and then you're like, but Dave, my podcast is not growing. We tried this and it's not growing. Well, yeah, no kidding, because nobody wants to hear that. And so if you are, it all starts with like reverse engineering. Like what's a show that your ideal customers would actually spend an hour out of a week and listen to? Yeah. That's the very first question. Okay. Come up with a bunch of different options. Which one of those could we create? Who's going to host it? How are we going to do it? And I've seen this where now all of a sudden the sales team is sending me, hey, can we reach out to the CMO at this company and see if, and offer her, we really want to get a meeting with her. Can we promise her an appearance on your podcast? Like that type of stuff. And that's of course I roll at that, but like, that's the level of you want this, people should be excited about this within the company, and it should be an asset. I also think it's a very powerful tool for the team internally, because let's say you have a larger sales org, you have 30, 40, 50, hundreds of people. What if the CEO hosted a podcast, and not only are people outside of the company listening, but now all the sales team and the marketing team are spending an hour a week listening to your CEO do an interview with one of your ideal customers? I guarantee there'd be some valuable,
holy shit,
knowledge that you would soak from that. And so I love the approach, but nobody's going to do it because people don't want to commit to doing it. And 6 months in, they're going to look at the ROI of it, and the CFO is asking, why are we spending 10 grand a month on a podcast? And there's too much of that type of nonsense to deal with. That I can totally understand. And oh my gosh, we're so far behind in the pipeline number for this quarter. We got to make more calls. We got to send more emails. We got to do more short-term stuff.
And that's the thing.
One of the reasons that it worked so well for us at Drift in the early days was that it was the very first thing that we did. And so as the company grew, we had already established that. And so it was the thing that was helping grow the company. And so we didn't have to try to justify it, because it was baked into the DNA of the company. Yeah. In fact, we joked about it so much. We joked about, oh my gosh, how are we going to measure the ROI of this podcast? Because so many people were sending us inbound messages telling us that they heard about the company from the podcast, that it's just became its own internal meme.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of the same thing. Mine was almost like a byproduct. I was doing Facebook Live and Instagram and all this other crap, and my team came to me and said, hey, we got to do a podcast. I'm like, just shut up. Could you just rip the audio from my Facebook Live thing? And it exploded. And then when I was, when we were doing the circuit and I was on, all the keynotes and stuff, the number one thing that people would come up and talk to me about was a podcast. Like, oh man, I love your podcast. Right. And to me, it was it was a happy accident, but thank God. And so it kind of leads into this personal brand and corporate brand challenge that I see out there. And I would love your perspective on this one, because I think we're moving into a world where companies have to be very comfortable with individuals within their organizations representing, like building their personal brands, but also representing theirs, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be the CEO, but like a rep. So like the chief evangelist officer. And I think that's going to start coming out more and more. But what do you say to the companies, and specifically from a marketing perspective? I see so many companies scared to let their reps go on social and just kind of they want to control the message, right? So they want to, like, I'm not going to name the name here, but there's a massive company that I work with who just put in a policy that anytime a sales rep wants to post on LinkedIn, they have to run it by somebody internally before it gets posted. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you are literally choking your marketing engine here by not allowing your reps to freely post. So how do you balance the fear of losing control of the messaging? Because look, I come from a marketing background. That's my degree. I get it. Like, we want to control the message to a certain degree, but also giving the autonomy to the reps to stretch and make mistakes. Like, how do you find that balance within an organization?
See, my biggest problem with that is actually not the wanting to approve the post. It's that person who's approving that, it's not like they're some like unbelievable social media marketer, right, and have built this amazingly huge following. And because it's growing so well, like, we have a very specific type of copy that works. And so we can only post that. It's like, no, let's just make sure that this is some like horribly on message PR thing. And it's like, look, I think that I totally understand the risks 100%. I just think that for some reason, when people have this discussion, they forget that, like, oh, there's risk in any business decision that you went into EMEA instead of APAC, risk. You're launching a blog on Medium instead of your own. They're like countless. Yep. And so another one of them is there a chance that some asshole in our company could just go off and ruin us? Yeah, for sure. But you know what? You could also say that was not us. That was that one person. It was not someone going rogue on the corporate account. It was very clearly Ron Smith, who's an asshole, and he's fired. Right? Yeah. Like, but I also think like 80-90% of the time that's not what happens. And the rewards are so great when you have the whole team, when you have it rowing in your direction, because you know what, it's good for the company, and it's good for the person. It's good for the employee. Yes, that person gets to build their brand, but like, that person is working for the company, and most of the time they're going to be talking about something in the related space. And so, like, you know, I'll use in my case, was it beneficial to Drift at the same time that it was beneficial to me that like my personal brand grew while I was there? 100%. And I think that you should be so lucky as the founder and CEO of a company to have 3 or 4 voices that people actually want to hear from. And so I would flip how I would think about that and say, yeah, there's a risk that something could go wrong. But like, you know, that should all stem back to like, I think that would be more of like a cause from the hiring concern. Like, are you hiring assholes who are then going to go and do this first? Like, if you feel good about the company that you're building and the internal team, and it also comes down to, John, like, you have to have a product that you care about and are passionate about. And so if you're miserable in your job and you're not hitting your number and the product stinks and there's no vision, then like, of course, what you're going to be posting on LinkedIn. But like, you know, look, like I look to Drift in those days, or you see like the sales team from in and around Gong, when they really believe it. So it's got to be, it's not just a cosmetic, like, let's have the team post. It's like, when you have a company that people believe in and they've seen the power of the product and customers are successful, like, these are all cascading things that, like, yes, then you should empower people to go do that on social media.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a like really good point that I've been trying to beat down right now, which is like the values conversation about how resetting and relooking at those values as an organization and the vision to get everybody bought in and believing in what they sell. I mean, I say it all the time that sales is the transfer of enthusiasm, right? Is that if you believe that strongly in what you sell, then I'm not saying sales is easy, but man, is it easier. right? And if you're just selling because you're like a commission check and whatever it is, then you're just a jackass sales rep trying to make a commission, and you're not doing anything here other than filling your own pockets, which good for you, but you're not doing anything bigger than that. And
Well, like what do people expect? Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? And like, what do people expect? Like, I'm sorry, don't answer what's the worst that's going to happen, because yes, people could post some terrible things, but I just think like I think that there's a misguided, like I think people's concern is that like someone's going to post a video like ripping a bong on LinkedIn, doing a company video.
Right.
And it's like, I think that what they're actually concerned about is like, are we using the right messaging? Like, are we using the right company tagline? And I like the answer to that is like, well, I don't want people at the company just using the tagline. Right. That's not what they should be doing. It's not just like hey, go to our webinar tomorrow. It's not some canned social media post. It's using the people inside of your company. And you should want to do this because as the founder CEO, you're hiring experts. You're hiring an expert to run marketing. You're hiring an expert to run sales. You're hiring an expert to run customer success. You're hiring an expert to run engineering. Why not let those people have voices to the market, to the public? And now I'm like, wow, I actually was reading the VP of Sales's blog, and her blog is amazing. And that kind of actually helped me build a better relationship with the company, because whoever runs sales over there feels legit. And so I just think there's definitely negatives, there's definitely downsides to it. But I think if you go into it with the right strategy and the right why, like back to our why conversation, what's the why for you wanting to have your team on social media? If you're in it for the right reasons there, I think that will be like, give you some guiding principles.
Well, and here's a question for you, because I'm going to relate it back to that, is do you believe in the notion that any PR is good PR? So even if it's bad, if it's creating a conversation, right? Do you believe in that? And I'm going to translate that to some experience that you and I have had, but as it relates to core values too. But do you believe that even if you did let a rep go rogue or whatever it is, as long as your core values and your vision, if it did, and you got exposure, is that a positive or is that a negative? And I guess it depends on what it is, but there's that whole adage, like all PR is good PR, no matter what, right? Do you believe that?
Yeah, no, I don't believe that. I don't think not in this space, not in our world. No, I don't think all PR is good PR. There's definitely bad PR. And I think everybody is very quick to judge and react today, and I think that perception can often be reality. And so, I think, I wouldn't be excited about some bad. I wouldn't be excited about some bad PR. Now, in the long run, things can balance themselves out. And like I think of like early days of COVID, you would have gotten canceled if you tried to do make it happen masks.
Right.
Right? Like, oh, look at this guy profiting off of COVID. But like, fast forward 6 months later, like masks became like fashion. Right. And so I think, time is honestly like the best answer, but I'm not an advocate for go and get yourself some bad PR. No, sir.
No, but if it happens, right? And I think this is where it goes back to the why and the values here, because you can recover from it if you're authentic, if you have strong values, and you've proven that to, so like, let's talk about a company and an individual. If you're a rock solid company that has good values, you've done good work out there, and you have one rogue rep that does some, puts a dick pic out there or something like that, you can recover from it. And I think that like, and a great example of this, and I know this was a rough spot, but was with Drift, right? I mean, with what Grant Cardone did up on stage, like that was a holy shit. But the way Dave and you responded to that turned it into a conversation and turned it into a positive when it could have gone really, really bad if the response and the values weren't there and people didn't know you guys for who you were, right?
Yeah, I think we fucked up and we owned it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish we had realized that sooner. And I wish that he wasn't there, and time is the best, the best medicine. And I mean, I've had thoughts where like, I guess like even in that moment, it didn't even hit me. And then cause I'm on the stage.
I remember you coming up afterwards being like, okay, so
And I'm like, man, but I've played that moment in my head where like, yeah, I wish I was the freaking hero in that moment. It was like, fuck this guy. That's not okay. But like, I fucked up. Like, it happened. And yeah. And so like, I think we, I think David did a great job of just being like, yeah, we fucked up and we owned it. The company's not going out of business tomorrow. We fucked up. We're going to take this one. We're going to take this one on the chin. And so I think, yeah.
But I think if you were
in the grand scheme of the brand, like,
I think you guys had done such a good job at building your brand. It was the exception, not the rule, right? When it becomes the rule, when it's like, yep, I expected that from you, then I don't think you get much, right? Because then you don't get benefit of the doubt. But, for me, I always say, like, I've tried over the years to really build my brand in a very authentic, very real way. So people know who what they're getting with me, right? And so, yes, I'm going to fuck up. I'm going to say something dumb. I'm probably going to say something that's going to get me in trouble, but hopefully I get the benefit of the doubt because it's coming from a good place. It's coming from a core value that I believe in. I just might not have articulated the right way.
Yeah. That I think you will retain the core of your audience if you do that. I think, one of the challenges of today though, is that sometimes you fucking up once can be enough for, I would say 80% of the people who are going to stick with you and be like, because they've seen all your stuff, but it's like the people that haven't. And Gary Vee actually talks about this a lot. And he talks about how, and I really love Gary, and I think he gets a lot of hate, and I think it's funny because people don't really understand.
People compare him to Grant Cardone. I'm like, you are not looking at this the right way. They're both loud and boisterous, but
different.
So completely on the opposite ends of values, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's so different. When I think of Gary Vee, I don't think drugs and private jets. Like he's so anyway, but he talks about something where like he says that he thinks he did himself a disservice because he's loud and he's definitive, and you just might see him kind of popping off on social media and you're like, I hate that guy. And I think that's going to happen. And so like, yeah, somebody could see one thing that you did, but I think that's why the authenticity piece is the most important, because it's also very hard to fake a brand. And so like, I think that the best brand is the authentic one, because you don't have to wake up and like put your like brand pants on in the morning and be like, oh shoot, I was wearing my Make It Happen shirt. Fuck. Like, like I'm brand John right now, because I know that if I'm brand Dave, I'm going to slip up because I like to talk and be real. And so it's just much easier in that context to be real and be a truly genuine person. And, people, not everybody's going to know you at that level, and you just have to be okay with that.
What are some of the brands you admire? Like macro, it could be individuals, could be businesses. What are the ones that you look at and you're like, you know what? I admire them, or they might not be my favorite, but right, the way that they carry themselves. There's some that you look to.
I don't know. I suck at answering this question because I'm not like a big brand. I'm not like a big brand loyalist guy. It's like, here's this guy that's preaching brand, but like, I've always been more into like just kind of following individuals. Like I've always been interested in like the behind the scenes, real part of things. But like, I don't know. I don't have a brand that I'm so.
I'll give you an example. Gary Vee's one, right? Like, because I always wonder, my struggle is always like, do you have to be a raging asshole to reach the pinnacle of, right, whatever it is? Because you look at a lot of the what other people would consider quote unquote successful, like multimillionaires and all this other stuff. And they seem like raging assholes. And I've always wondered, do you have to be a raging asshole to get to that level? And there are a few examples that make me feel better about it. Richard Branson's of the world, the Mark Benioffs of the world, the Gary V's of the world. Now, don't get me wrong, have they probably pissed a lot of people off, and have they done some stuff that I don't know, obviously, but in general, I look at them as, okay, there's people who I believe are doing it the right way and for the right reasons, right? Versus other people that I look at like Larry Ellison and those people that I'm like, Steve Jobs. Like, I know everybody looks at Steve Jobs as a god, but the guy was a jackass. You know what I mean? He was an absolute jackass. And same thing with Elon Musk. Like, I've heard stories about working for Elon where it's just like he will literally chew you up and spit you out if he's in a bad mood and it had nothing to do with you. So there's the balance there, but those are the type of ones that I kind of look to say, cool.
You definitely have an Android.
No, I don't. No, I'm an iPhone guy. I'm an iPhone guy. No, I'm not one of those sticker. No, hey, look.
No, I hear you on that. I've honestly become the reason I didn't even have a good answer to that was because like I've honestly become so jaded. Like I don't care about Jeff Bezos. I don't care about Elon Musk. Like I don't want to be one of those guys. I don't. Yeah. That's the opposite of things that I think would sound fun. And yeah, like, you know, you mentioned some names of people, Larry Ellison, Mark Benioff, but like I don't know them. They could be terrible people to their family or whoever behind the scenes. And I'm not saying that I'm not putting that on them. I'm at this like weird stage in my life where I'm jaded to look at this look at this billionaire tech CEO who I'm not wowed by that. Yeah. Give me Casey Neistat all day over one of those people. That's who I'd rather go want to have a beer with and hang out with.
All day long. And that's why I like other people's definition of success, because that's not mine, right? Mine is, again, goes back to happiness. And I'm on the Gary Vee train on this one. If you make 40 grand a year and you get to go home and put your kids to bed and go and play Little League, and that's happiness to you, then my friend, you are the winner, right? Because there's multiple people I know who are multiple millionaires and stuff like that who are just miserable pricks. And I would never want to live that lifestyle regardless of the money that they have, right?
Right. Yep.
So
I agree. Yeah. It's the absence of wanting things, right? Like,
well, when you made a comment earlier about time, right? About what the most valuable thing, like money buys time, which is the most precious asset there is, right? So it's not like money buys happiness, but it gives you time to become happy, right? And I think that's when I made that mental switch of like, ooh, I wanted to make money to buy stuff, to, ooh, I want to make money so I don't have to do things. You know what I mean? So I can spend more time doing the things that I want to do.
To me, it's not even. It's even gone like beyond money, and it's like what I have a limited amount of time in any day, in any week, and on the planet. What do you want to use? What's the best resource of your time for an hour? And I remember, I think I was at HubSpot, and I remember like hearing Brian Halligan, who's the CEO, talk about this at some point. But he was like, he talked about something silly, like, you know, the best use of his time was like having someone like pick up his dry cleaning. And that seems dumb, like, oh, here's a rich guy like having somebody pick up his dry cleaning, but it's more of just like or like I don't have a car, I take Uber everywhere and I got dry cleaning. He's automated, like he's removed those decisions.
Yeah, the 4-hour work week, basically.
If you the 4-hour work week stuff, but like, or like if you can spend $100 every 2 weeks and have someone clean your apartment, and that's 4 hours of you not having to clean your apartment, that's a great use of your time. I also care, like I care a lot more about that. Here's an example. This is a random side story, but my parents came and visited me, and I'm in Florida right now, and their flight got in at like 2 a.m, and my dad was like, so what, you're going to come pick us up? And I'm like, I'm not waking up to pick you up at 2 a.m. to 2 a.m. It was like $80 to have a car go and pick them up. And so I'm like, okay, I can, $80 is something that I can afford. And so I'm going to, but he just could not fathom that I spent money to have him do that, where he would have, my wife was like, well, in fairness, he would have gotten up at 2 a.m. to pick you up. And I'm like, exactly. And that's the difference between us.
Yep. It's also like an old school mentality, right? Like parents are the same way. It's like, you pick your parents up at the airport. That's what you do, right? And it's like, fucking just take an Uber.
That's what you do. I'm like, look, if you were landing at 3:00 in the afternoon, 100%, but I'm not going to wake. I go to bed at 9:00. I'm not going to wake up in the middle of the night to go pick you up at the airport.
Well, and it's a healthy exercise. I mean, I did pick that up through 4-hour work week, which is basically know your hourly rate, right? So it's like, how much money do you want to make divided by how many hours you want to work, and that's your hourly rate. And if you can outsource any of that for somebody who could do it cheaper, do it. Just make sure that you're spending that time you get back on the stuff that is going to help you either make that money or enjoy that time. So I think it's important there.
I'm just moving because I got to plug myself in.
Yeah, no worries.
Couple minutes.
No worries. We're finishing up, but I wanted to tap in one more thing because you're writing a book, right?
Yeah, it's done. It comes out in 2 weeks.
Nice. It's called, what is it? Founder Brand?
It's called Founder Brand. Yeah.
Yeah, what's it about? What was
And it's
first
a
of all,
lot.
what drove you
Oh,
to write
this is
this?
great. This is great. So I realized that there's kind of like this marketing thing that I've helped founders and companies do unintentionally, which is um, build their name and reputation and awareness through the market, not just by marketing the product, but by like making the founder a key part of that brand and turning them into like the spokesperson of the company. And it's a lot of what we talked about today, specific to like LinkedIn, for example. I just believe that today, as a founder of a company, you have all the tools you need to build an audience of your own. Now you have to have something interesting to say. The point of in my book, it's not just like if you post on LinkedIn and Twitter, you will gain MRR. It doesn't work like that. But a lot of times the founder started this business. Like if I use you, right? Like if I'm the founder, if I'm thinking about you, you're the founder of your business, right? Like, well, you're the crazy guy who had this idea to start this business. Most founders are crazy for some reason. They have either they had some like big epiphany or life-changing event, or got fired from their job and had to go start their own thing and it became this big thing. There's usually some story there that inherently makes them interesting. But also because they're the founder of this business, they're involved in 10 different tracks, from investors to advisors to hiring to recruiting to training to deep industry knowledge, what's happening in the world. And so you end up getting all this like gold from a social media and marketing standpoint that you could be using. And on top of that, like we talked about today, like people want to buy from people. And so I don't just want to see your logo. I want to see your face, because this is your company. I want to know. And I believe this is true even for big companies like with Salesforce and Benioff. And even though you hate Steve Jobs and Apple, just play it. And so I think like,
Oh, hey, Steve, I just heard he's an asshole.
No, I'm sure he was. And so this is something that I did at Drift with David Cancel in the early days, like really spending a lot of time and PR effort around like building up his brand through social media. And he already had a following. And so we tapped into that. And then at Privy, I did this with Ben, who's the founder there. We launched a podcast and focused on his social media following. And I've seen a couple times how that has had an impact on more people showing up to then buy from your business, right? It's not a perfect funnel, but it's like, wow, I listened to the CEO of Privy put out a daily podcast for a year.
Wow.
And so that guy's putting out 100 episodes of tactical e-commerce marketing information. He's not selling Privy. He's teaching you how to do the thing that the product will then help you do. And so more people show up on the website for that reason. So I still think that it's an underutilized channel. And I still think that a lot of marketing teams don't focus on it because they have so much pressure to hit the number and build pipeline and do these direct response activities. And so I called it Founder Brand and wanted to help more founders and their marketing teams turn the founders into like the mouthpieces for the brand. And I just think that like the PR model, and this is not to rail on PR agencies. I worked at one. I have deep respect for people in that industry. But I just think the model is broken where you shouldn't have to pay, you don't have to pay 10 grand a month to like hope that people find you and get articles placed, because you have all the tools where if you have something interesting to say, like all the reasons for your being a founder, like we said, your customers are literally online. You can reach them. And so like direct to consumer is not just for e-commerce businesses, it's for B2B also, which is like you can reach your ideal customers where they're hanging out online without having to spend $1. And I wanted to just put that together in a book and hopefully help teach people how to do it and get more founders to stop this like BS excuse of like, I don't have the time. Right. Or it's not worth it. I think it's like the most important thing you should be doing.
Well, and you're doing it anyways. I think that's the shift, right? You're already having these conversations.
Yeah,
you're already doing this. Record it. So, and it actually
totally and a perfect example of this is like immediately after this podcast, you could go to LinkedIn and you could be like, had a really interesting conversation with Dave Gerhardt today about, the future of LinkedIn and blah, blah, not to promote the podcast at all, but just to like comment, right? Or like talked to a really interesting candidate yesterday, and she told me one thing that she's seeing inside of a lot of SaaS companies. You're in these conversations all day. You're just thinking of yourself as like a publisher. And if there was like a publisher running around with you, like, hey, John, that was an interesting nugget from that meeting. You should share that, right?
Yeah, that's
and to push people to like build their own media properties instead of just trying to do so much third-party content stuff.
Well, I think that just to tie it back to sales too is like, you know, I wrote a post a while back called the Founder's Dilemma, and it goes back to the transfer of enthusiasm, right? Like when you believe in what you sell, it's a lot easier because you can transfer that enthusiasm. What happens is founders, even the most introverted engineer you've ever come across, they create a product and they'll think they're not sales in any way, shape, or form. But then you start asking them about the product that they created, the problem that they solved, how they went about it, and you literally watch them just start to light up and explain to you all the cool things that they did to solve that problem, and they're transferring that enthusiasm over to you, and it's just like, damn, I want to buy some of that, right? So it's like all you have to do is reframe the mindset of marketing and sales to look at it as, you know, brand or whatever you want to look at it as. But I mean, the people that aren't on this train, man, I think they're gonna, I don't know if it's a slow death anymore, but it's going to get real apparent real soon, if it hasn't already, that's kind of the future of the alignment, sales, marketing, PR, all of it together. And we all have to be our own mini machines here. So
I agree. And you can be to that. I mean, that's the most powerful thing is you can, that can be your audience and reach people directly that way. Yep.
Love it, man. All right, well, we're coming up on the hour here, and love the conversation. It was always just good catching up with you anyway. Love to see what you're doing, and love the kids in the background too. Because like you said, family's number one.
Chaos.
Yeah, it always is. 2 and a 4-year-old, you say? Yeah, you're right in the shit right now. My daughter's at least 11, so she can kind of go hang out for a while and not make too much noise. But
I'm gonna throw everybody in the pool right now.
There you go. Awesome. Well, anybody, you want to point anybody in the direction? It's DGMG, right? That's the company.
Yeah, but everything's on my website, DaveGerhardt.com. That's the easiest place to go.
Awesome. All right, Dave. Well, look, it was great catching up with you as always, and let's stay in touch here. Let's not make it so it's another couple years since we get together here, because I'm loving what you're doing out there, and I'm on a new journey myself. So I might pick your brain a little bit on my personal brand journey and seeing where I'm trying to take it next. So cool.
Okay. Sounds good. I appreciate it, John. Thank you.
All right, brother. And everybody, as you're listening, thank you so much for listening as always. And like I always say, no matter how bad your day goes, or no matter how bad your day went, go out there and make somebody smile today. Because if you make somebody smile today, you know you had a good day, and the world needs a lot more of that right now. So thank you all for listening. I'll see you on the other side. Thank you so much for your time today and listening to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. With your support and our incredible guests, we're one of the top sales podcasts in the industry with over 1 million downloads, and I can't thank you enough. To keep the momentum going, if you could go to your favorite podcast platform and leave us a 5-star review, I would greatly appreciate it. In return, I will answer any question that you have on Instagram. Hit me up there at John M as in Michael Barrows with a video question or a DM, and I will get right back to you, I promise. And last but not least, if you're looking for training, I'm adjusting my training approach this year, and I'm actually going to be delivering training to the masses. I'll be delivering live training the first and second week of every single month with our 2 marquee courses, Filling the Funnel and Driving to Close, to anybody who wants to join. And it includes membership in our on-demand platform with weekly AMAs. So you can go to jbarrows.com/open to check out the details. Thanks again, and have a great day.